to your district, you can send that out on the government's dime. However, you cannot send out things that say vote for me, but you can send out things that say what you did that would make people want to vote for you, if you get the idea there. If I'm a challenger and we're talking about, this idea of incumbency, anything that I mail out, I got to pay for. You don't get a lot of mailings from challengers. Don't worry about hotline. Don't worry about hotline. What else have you got up here? Go ahead.
Bill of Attainder.
Bill of Attainder we just went over, and I know it's on the tape. So what else have we got? Okay. Yes?
Ex post facto law.
We just went over ex post facto law, and I know it's on the tape. So does anybody know of any terms that we have not yet talked about that you have a question? Yes, Tony?
Reapportionment.
What was reapportionment? Go ahead.
It had to do with lines for the census.
Does have to deal with the census. Every 10 years, the government is bound to go in and count the population. And the House of Representatives is based on the number of people that live there. So what they do is they count, and then there are going to be certain states that gain people, certain states that lose people. Reapportionment is that you've got to go back and redraw the districts so that they're basically going to have an equal number of people in them. You might have to draw an extra district if you gained people. You might have to lose a district and redraw things if you've lost enough people. So that's what reapportionment is, which actually takes us to gerrymandering. What's the problem that happens when they redraw the districts? Go ahead.
The person who originally did it, Jerry something.
Elbridge Jerry, yes.
Drew it like a salamander, which is why they call it gerrymandering, and he drew it that way so that his party could win elections.
Ooh, gerrymandering is the idea that you're going to draw districts with partisan ideas in mind. So if you're a Republican, you're going to try and draw as many majority Republican districts as possible so as many Republicans can win. If you're Democrat, you would do the same thing, only with Democratic majorities. Gerrymandering is technically illegal, but the trick on this is that if you draw districts that look suspect, then in fact they're typically going to get struck down. The exception of this that I gave you, how does Maryland fit in with gerrymandering? Go ahead.
It's like the worst gerrymandered state.
It's really bad, Maryland is. And do you remember what they compared that district in Maryland to?
A salamander?
No, that was Elbridge Jerry.
Oh, a dragon?
A broken-winged pterodactyl. Broken-winged pterodactyl. And I think we talked about this in one class, but maybe not in the other one. So I'm not going to go too far with this one. I think this is only for the 10 o'clock class, not for the 11 and the 12. So gerrymandering and reapportionment, don't worry about that unless you're in the 10 o'clock class. Unless you're in the 10 o'clock class. Any other questions that you've got up here?
Franking.
Franking. We just went over franking, and I know it's on the tape. Yes?
How a bill becomes a law.
Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Looking at articles, because I know that we're coming up on time. X Factor. If you remember, and we've talked about this one several times, this was Jack and Jerry Ryan, and this is the thing that got Barack into office because he was going to lose in Illinois. So take a good look at that. Make sure that you take a good look at protecting our kids. This was the one that was in fact dealing, if you remember, with the sex offender residency requirement laws. And we talked about a number of different things with sex offenders in all the classes. If you remember, we talked about the Georgia sex offender law. We talked about the idea of Family Watchdog, that particular website. And I believe we had talked about Naked Man Drinking Coffee. Do y'all remember Naked Man Drinking Coffee?
Yes.
Anybody at all? Go ahead.
He was drinking coffee early in the morning, and he was standing in front of a sliding window, so it's pretty big. And this mother and her kid, they were walking to the bus stop in the morning for school, and they looked over and they could see him from the bus stop. And it was,
well, they saw him not necessarily from the bus stop, but on the way there.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
And it was an issue because, well, he thought he was in the privacy of his home. But
And many of y'all wanted him to be in the privacy of his home.
Yeah, but they were claiming that if, you can be seen from the street, it might not necessarily be privacy.
Be private. The police brought him up on charges. What happened when he went to court?
He ended up not getting charged.
What did the police say, which was the number one reason why they charged him? What's that?
You're gonna have like contempt, so
The police said that they thought that he wanted to be seen naked by people in that window, and that was very, very difficult to prove. And let me go back, because I think I mentioned this in one class, but not in all three. The woman actually had cut through a yard. So the window that he was standing in front of drinking his coffee naked was not in the front of the house, but it was really more on the side of the house. So when she was walking her child to the bus stop and they cut through a couple of yards, they cut right through the side of his house, and then it's like, whoo, there he was. And that was another reason that ultimately this was probably dropped. They couldn't prove that he had this motivation to be seen, but then they also could not prove she had cut through his yard. I think I had mentioned in basically all the classes too, this other little quickie article, or at least in the 10 o'clock, maybe not in the others, but it says up here, just talking about this idea of gerrymandering, 37 out of 439 House seats are considered competitive because of the way that cheating has gone on. 14% of eligible votes, or 9% adults, or 9% of the population voted for either Trump or Clinton in the primaries. And about 100 million eligible voters elected not to cast a ballot in this year's election, according to turnouts, but 132,000 did, which was low since the last Clinton election. So the Bill Clinton election, so keep that one in mind. And just looking, again, just really, really quick, because I know we're almost out of time, just checking the links in here for Congress. Bear with me. Looking at these Congress video links, I threw in here, and I haven't mentioned this to y'all yet, I threw in here a video that deals with differences between the House and the Senate. It's going to break down that impeachment maybe a little bit. It breaks down terms and things. Understand, if you get this question, and it probably is pretty good sense that you will, if you get the differences between the House and the Senate, make sure that you can explain your answers. So don't just list it and put it in a little chart, but write it out and explain the significance of the terms, or explain the significance of the age difference, or explain why the House has so many more members than the Senate does as far as these differences, or filibuster. Explain the idea that the House has really structured debates and you can only talk for a few minutes at a time, versus filibuster is how long can you talk?
As long as you keep talking.
As long as you keep talking. And in fact, what is the term for stopping a filibuster? Oh, cloture. C-L-O-T-U-R-E. And how many votes do you need to invoke cloture or stop a filibuster? 60 is the number that you need. The Georgia sex offender law, naked man drinking coffee, and family watchdog. And Christmas lights. Yeah, we can't forget this. If you get a question that deals with Christmas lights in the shape of a middle finger, it is legal. It is legal. So take a look at this. This is actually from the scenario, but take a quick look at it and you can see how wonderfully artistic. I mean, they've even got the nail polish up there on the nails. I mean, isn't that just wonderful? Not to advocate that you go and start flipping the bird at Christmas time. But basically, that's what this is. Do y'all have any questions? Oh, and one more thing. Can't forget this. You'll notice these other three articles that are dealing with federalism. And man, the best articles were the ones that were not on the first exam. So you'll notice up here, humane execution. Remember, if you're going to put somebody to death, what has got to happen or not happen?
It has to be humane.
They can't feel pain. Be comfortable with those different examples of the death penalty. Because if you remember, it mentioned electric chair. How many volts of electricity do they send into you? Make sure you know, it's like licking a lot of 9-volt batteries. That's what we talked about in class. We talked about the firing squad being legal again. You notice up here, crackdown in Arizona deals with Arizona immigration policy. Make sure that you're comfortable with this. It's still 100% legal in Arizona. You remember what was it that Arizona police officers needed to ask?
Papers.
Papers, please! And in fact, when could they ask for these papers?
On a traffic stop?
During a lawful contact. So, traffic stop. If you were calling and needing service, if you had witnessed a crime occurring, make sure that you're comfortable explaining this. And then if you remember stop and frisk, this was the one dealing with New York. This is the one article that's got a frick load of statistics. Make sure that you're comfortable with the statistics as you explain stop and frisk. And at this point, They're kind of still allowed to do this, but there's a couple of articles that deal with it on that page, so take a look at that. Do y'all have any questions? Because I know I got to go teach a class. Okay, I'll try and get these posted as fast as possible. It looks like Matt did not film the back of Kelly's head. Okay, I guess he just did. Y'all have a good day. Good luck on this.